our next keynote, leveraging insight and analytics at Ford. One of the things that we've tried to do with this conference, and this is based upon feedback from prior sessions, is people are very interested in case studies. Okay, what did you do? It's one thing to talk about this in abstract, but what did you do? How'd you do it? What worked for you? What didn't work for you? Well, here we have Paul Ballew with us, who is the Global Chief Data and Analytics Officer at Ford Motor Company. And Paul was saying that he believes they've got the largest data scientist analytics group here in Michigan. So I'm sure you didn't get there in one easy step. So his information is in your program. I'm going to let you read that yourself, and we're going to go right to Paul and his presentation. There will be time at the end for Q&A, so if you'll hold your questions, and welcome, Paul.
Well, very nice to see you guys. Good morning. Delightful to be here. I was mentioning just how dynamic meetings on data and analytics have become. When you've been in the profession as long as I have been, which is 3 decades now, we used to have meetings that involved 1 or 2 tables, and now we have meetings that involve 300 people. So it's just great to see the interest in the science as well as the business applications of what we're doing. And I'm very, very delighted to be here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to give you a little context about our industry that is central to this town and certainly to this state. I started in this industry in May of 1985 with the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago trying to make sense of the industry. And I want to start there because as you think about the journey we're all on to move towards leveraging data and insight to more effectively drive our business, drive efficiency, better connect with our customers, all of those things we talk about in business analytics, the automotive industry is a great industry to focus on. And it's a great industry to focus on because this industry has been in a transformational mode my entire professional career. And as you look at this industry, there's great lessons around what it takes to get back in the game, but there's also great lessons around what you have to do to truly transform yourself, because we're not done. Despite all the decades of change that I'm going to show you, this industry is still facing a lot of pressure, and a lot of fundamental need of change still has to play out in the industry. So I want to start there to provide some context. And in doing so, it'll set up the discussion of why did Ford 15 months ago make the decision to become the first vehicle manufacturer to have a global data, insight, and analytics function. Even in my days at GM, we never got to a full-blown enterprise approach. We got probably 2/3 of the way there. But Ford has made a commitment to provide the support throughout all of our business decisioning activities. So we are an entity that supports everything in the company. And that's very exciting for us. It's also a very daunting task on a day-to-day basis because when you think about the degree of investment in data and analytics, but more importantly, the degree of change in business process change and business adoption, every day is an exciting day. And I want to give you that context. So as you're going down your personal journeys or the journeys within your own organization and you're thinking about this, hopefully you can learn the lessons from an industry that needs a lot of help, a company that's made a very, very large investment to try to transform itself, and hopefully help you make some new mistakes so you can focus on things besides what we've already learned and gone down. So first, let's talk a little bit about the journey of data and analytics, and I'll transition over into the auto industry. As I mentioned, I started in May of 1985, and if you would have walked up to me in May of 1985 and said 30 years later, there would be this profession we now call data and analytics, or term I don't like, big data, or some reference along those lines, I would have told you, no. Because back then, when you really think about what we did in the profession, it was generally concentrated in 2 areas, market research and some type of forecasting or business planning support function. So for instance, at that time, in vehicle manufacturers in this industry, the chief economist generally played the role of providing forecasting and planning support for the organization. As I look back on that, a couple things jump out versus today. Well, on the one end, a lot of what we're trying to answer has been unchanged. So there's one side to the equation versus 30 years ago, which I feel very familiar with. The business questions we're wrestling with. How to be more efficient, how to cut costs, how to better connect with our customers, how to anticipate future needs, how to optimize whatever business questions in front of us. However, once again, as I just alluded to, if I fast forward from 1985 to today, there has been one big change despite the fact that those questions haven't changed. And that is, of course, why we're all here. That is the tools, the capabilities, the ability to generate insights with a high degree of precision and timeliness has changed beyond anything we could have hoped for. It's only a subtle joke that this is the way we used to do forecasting with forecasting stones. The truth is we use Ouija boards, or we'd go out and pull out a woolly caterpillar sometime. And if you think about that period of time, we were highly dependent on very dated government statistics or industry statistics that came in with a lag. The only way we really got insights on our customers is we had to rely on market research techniques, which play a very important role today, but we were heavily dependent on that. And then we had to try to bring that all together with very limited tools. For those of you that have been around for any period of time, you remember the data punch card era, or the day when we got our first PC and we had a 1, 2, 3 application to it, and 37 of us signed up to use that desktop PC. We were lacking all of those elements, and because of that, the degree of precision and the timeliness by which we could provide support to business partners or other decision makers, in the case of the Fed, policymakers, was limited. It was very limited. And so we spent a large part of our time examining what had happened versus our ability of being able to provide insights about how we could do things to affect outcomes. It's a big change. Now, for me personally, why is this relevant to automotive? Well, this is my first discussion point of the day, or first set of discussion points of the day. It's because this industry has gone through such a transformation in the last 4 decades, I think sometimes we underestimate it. Where at the same time, the transformation has been necessary but not sufficient. So first, let me give you the glass half full side of this and challenge you to think about how much this industry has changed. Starting off by just some visuals. This is an F-150 in 1985. This is an F-150 in 1995, and this is an F-150 in 2015. For those of you that know anything about Ford, we'd like to talk about F-150s. The reasons why our IDs work every day and the lights come on every day are largely because of the fact that we get to talk about F-150s. Pretty dramatic change in terms of the exterior styling of this vehicle. But what has been perhaps more amazing has been the technology, the creature comforts, the interiors, the overall performance of this vehicle. If you look at the interior of an F-150 in 1985, which is hard to show on this monitor, but the monitor over there, it's pretty amazing. If you were driving an F-150 as your regular work truck each and every day in 1985, you were probably spending a little bit of time with your urologist because it was busting up your kidneys pretty regularly. Now if you go into a new F-150 and you drive an F-150, the interior capacity and capabilities of the product are better than luxury vehicles 10 years ago. And by the way, the purchase price reflects that to some degree if you purchase the full-size pickup, which once again I'm good with, by the way. So, come on, that's a little bit of humor. So we've seen dramatic change on the product side. I would also say when you look at the fundamentals of this industry, it's been amazing to see the ongoing commitment to be more efficient and more effective in terms of the marketplace. So think about productivity in this industry. When we talk about labor productivity in the U.S. economy overall, we generally talk about 1.5%, and in some periods of time, 2%. The automotive industry has averaged almost 4% productivity year in and year out since the mid-1980s. Year in and year out. There's a few dips in there associated with the downturn of 2008, 2009, but when you take that out and normalize it, this industry has made an incredible commitment to being more efficient, more effective, and running our operations in a modern way. We look at this on some other measures like quality of vehicles. J.D. Power measures, one of my old stomping grounds as well. It's pretty amazing to see the transformation of initial quality or long-term quality in this industry, and for the domestic manufacturers in particular, starting in the mid-1980s. In fact, J.D. Power has to change occasionally their survey design to make the diagnostic tools still relevant and to make sure that they're getting to the next level of insights because the quality improvement in this industry has been nothing less than extraordinary. We see that on long-term quality as well in terms of vehicle dependability. We've also seen this in terms of how we produce and the nature of our factories, our supply chains, our overall management. This is truly in the archives. This is pictures of our manufacturing processes a few decades back. Been to a manufacturing facility recently. Just-in-time inventory, statistical quality control at every workstation, the ability to anticipate problems and have those gates. We no longer need an and-on cord necessarily because we've got those gates at each and every workstation. It's absolutely amazing when you think about an industry just a couple decades ago which still had parts bins. When you walked into a manufacturing facility, you won't see a parts bin anymore. There are some buffers within the manufacturing process, but the buffers have been eliminated because the industry has embraced a just-in-time, lean manufacturing approach systematically and doing so on a global basis. Go to facilities in China. Go to facilities in Eastern and Central Europe. Suppliers. It's amazing, just absolutely amazing. And of course, going right along with this, while the world has embraced Moore's Law with regards to computing power, we've embraced our own version of Moore's Law with regards to the technology in our vehicles. We get up in the morning and we think products like aircrafts or software are very sophisticated from a technology standpoint. When you drive your new Mustang, when the sun comes back out at some point in time, hopefully, just realize there's 100 million lines of code in that vehicle. The sensors, the detection devices, the systems controls. It's absolutely amazing to think about how fast we have changed product, manufacturing, quality, productivity, and the overall technology in our vehicles. Now, given all that, and given everything we've been through, we should be in a really good celebratory mode as an industry. In the last 4 or 5 years, as we recovered from the dark, deep days of the last part of the last decade, we felt better. But what's interesting about this industry, and this extends to other industries as well, but certainly automotive, is that while we've made all those changes, the pressures on our business model are still as acute today as they were 20 years ago. In fact, I would argue in some dimensions they're more acute. And the reason being is that our industry remains incredibly competitive and overcapacitized. There are 99 vehicle manufacturers in the world today, producing over 2,200 nameplates. If you would have walked up to me in 1985 when I started to try to make sense of this industry and said, hey, I believe there's going to be 100 vehicle manufacturers in the next few decades, I would have looked at you like, you're out of your mind. This industry is going to deal with this overcapacity. It's going to consolidate. It's going to adjust. Its business model is unsustainable. And occasionally we'll get a vehicle manufacturer like Daewoo that goes out of business, but we've gotten 10 others that have come into the equation, bringing capacity, pushing the envelope in terms of pricing and vehicle affordability, technology, you name it. So we as an industry get up each and every day, and we've waited for this miracle magic bullet to come at and change our business model, and it just hasn't occurred. In the same regard, we've got other pressures. One that some of you probably know a little bit about is just the regulatory environment. We are targeting things such as 54 miles to the gallon. We're targeting dramatic changes in CO2 emissions. We're targeting certainly safety changes. And when you bring all of those elements together, for us as an industry, they put an incredibly large burden to bring that technology and those solutions to bear while not passing cost on to the consumer because the competition keeps a lot of restraint and customers are very price sensitive in the equation. So there's a real struggle. And because of that, the financial performance or the financial evaluation of the industry reflects those pressures. So again, if you pause and you think about 3 decades plus of change, of restructuring, of productivity growth that's been 2x the average of the US economy, dramatic improvements in quality, the adoption of technology, the streamlining of our go-to-market activities, the list just goes on and on and on. You would have expected perhaps better financial valuation of the industry or better systematic improvement of our financial performance as an industry. And there's great lessons in here for all of us. And as we think about the drivers of our industry and driving up that valuation, the question and the primary lesson for any of us is, what do you have to do to continuously transform your business beyond what's necessary and moving into that next phase of truly providing value in the marketplace, which is going to materialize with customers' wow and delights and will allow you to get the valuation that we so desperately seek as a for-profit entity. It's a fascinating time. And so when we get up and we look at our business model and we look at our industry, we have to grapple with the fact that we're facing all of these pressures: technology, regulation, competition, new players, changes in customer behavior. Think about what we all now do in terms of pre-shopping for vehicles and the amount of information that's out there and the knowledge we're armed with before we go into that showroom. All of those elements are with us, and the big question for this industry coming out of the downturn, and even as we're going through probably the latter stages of this cycle, do we have an approach that is going to allow us to be in a successful business model and not just a survival business model heading into the decades ahead? Interesting question, and a question that, for myself, I kind of stepped away from. So I left in 2007. I left GM, went out on the East Coast, was living in New York City, kind of enjoying life a little bit on the other side of the table where I could just advise people on what to do and then I could fly on to the next client. That's not bad work, by the way, when you can get it. It has its own grueling schedule, but not a bad thing. And then somewhere in the early summer of 2014, I got this phone call of saying, hey, would you like to come back to Detroit and would you like to come back to the automotive industry? And my response was, yeah, really? Kind of like, you have to understand, in our household, we would come back every Thanksgiving, and my mother-in-law would, every Thanksgiving, say, when are you moving back? And the family joke was, when Ford called. When Ford called, we'll move back. So in the summer of 2014, Ford called. And then you kind of go, well, now what am I going to do? And they actually call. And the reason they called is that Mark Fields and Bob Shanks and Bill Ford understand these issues very intimately, and they get it. And they understand the fact that if we don't transform our business model, these pressure points are going to continue to be a vice on us. And the real issue in all of that is, well, what do you do to transform your business? What are the enablers to help you do that? And what was exciting for me in those discussions that went on for about 5 months was that they understood the fact that where the journey in data and analytics was heading is that if it were properly structured and leveraged and integrated in terms of the business decisioning environments, it is a critically important enabler that can assist in the transformation. The challenge is very few companies have done this. Right now, despite automotive and other industrial sectors and tech sectors and telco and all of these other industries, which, by the way, I could have done similar slides on in terms of their state of their business model, despite all of those pressures on their business models, very few companies have been able to put this all together and harness the potential of data and analytics. We're kind of like a unicorn a little bit. It's beautiful. You see it out there, but you've never seen one in person. And in the discussions that occurred in 2014, that's really where the question came down. Building the technical competencies, building a data organization, building the infrastructure is not easy. But the real challenge of our profession now is increasingly going beyond that. It's about being able to truly transform the business, or at least support the transformation of the business. And that's a different set of skills. Now, data and analytics for a long time has been in the back room, kind of been a bright, shiny object. Sometimes we use it in some of our business decisioning activities. So for instance, at Ford Motor Credit was very mature in their analytics because credit risk had hit that maturity level. But that was the exception, not the rule. So the question we had upon us is a question that most businesses were looking at, and many businesses now find some sex appeal around. Well, if we just merely harness the power of big data, it is an enabler, it's a disruptor. In theory, because of the precision and timeliness of insights, if we could just harness that, that will change the model. Whoops, we clicked that one too fast. And we're even at a point now where Dilbert's done 36 plus cartoons on data and analytics. And that's the great solution. We should just pray to the temple of big data. Right? If we just collect all of this data, somewhere, somehow, there's going to be this great, profound insight. Now, this industry always has to watch out for that because we suffer from a magic bullet syndrome. We've just been waiting for that one next new hot product or one next new hot marketing campaign to transform our business. That's partially true at times, but it's not really a sustainable or scalable model. So for us, we don't subscribe to Dilbert. We do embrace the fact that big data and availability of insights and data exhaust fumes, or however you want to describe it, it's true. The ability to generate, ingest, curate, and make sense is unprecedented versus anything we could have imagined 10 years ago. We get it. We now have a data ops organization. We have a data acquisition team. We're doing all of those things. I ran data and analytics at Dun & Bradstreet. Been there, done that. So yes, this is part of it. We do embrace this, but we don't see this as being the magic bullet either. We also want to be careful that we don't become David Letterman, stupid, dumb data pet tricks. And by the way, today's world, you can do some really fun stuff. So for instance, do you realize that vegetarians miss fewer flights? Very profound. Or that Mac users book with more expensive hotels. Goes with a little bit of condescension and so on that goes along with that. You guys get it? How about this one? If you have a kid applying for a job, the type of browser they use has some relationship to their likelihood of being a good employee. By the way, if they're applying online, tell them to use Chrome. See? If nothing else, you got that value out of today. How about this one? Don't use your credit card at a bar. Now, if you're going to the dentist, use your credit card. Told you, stupid, dumb pet tricks. And then our favorite one is, if you own a Ford truck and you own a dog, you're more likely to be loyal. So our latest marketing strategy is buy a truck, get a puppy. It's cheaper than incentives, by the way. Every time I say this, I think the anti-cruelty of the Humane Society's down the road, and they're going to take me up on this offer and start saying, hey, here's a bunch of puppies. So we'll go from there. That's not our goal. Our goal is also not to do this, which sometimes we do as well. So every month, you know this industry lives on monthly sales. Monthly sales come out, and when we have a good month, we say it's because we stood on one leg and we shouted and we banged a drum or we did something. Those casual relationships are not what this journey is all about. Our journey is about embracing the fact that the environment does afford to us the opportunities that we could have only dreamed of 10 years ago. So look, we are amazed at Google with 50,000 searches a second. We are amazed with their ability to make sense of over 23 petabytes a day. For those of you that don't get up in the morning and worry about data storage like some of the rest of us, 23 petabytes a day is 2x the data storage capacity of Ford as recently a year ago, our entire data environment. It's amazing. But we embrace the fact that where we're going could be much more significant than that. We embrace the fact that with connected vehicles, new third-party data sources, that the opportunities in front of us to see you, to know you, and act in a meaningful way on your behalf are something we could have only dreamed of even 5 years ago. We embrace all of that because we believe that we're going to be able to fully bring to life things that are conceptual and fun things to talk about at cocktail parties, the Internet of Things. If I would have given you a survey before this and asked you, give me a definition of the Internet of Things, I probably would have gotten 300 different responses. Or we talk about connected vehicles. Well, what does that mean? Does it mean a vehicle that looks like this? It's a cartoon drawing, so the answer is no. Does it mean that we're going to be able to, with the customer's permission and full buy-in and support, generate insights about the vehicle, generate insights about the individual? The answer is absolutely yes. We're embracing that, but we have to do so in a way that makes it concrete, not just buzzwords or expressions. You know, the world's better connected today, the Internet of Things. Do you understand the power of connectivity? We have to, at the end of the day, transform that into what we're trying to do from a business standpoint. And the ultimate goal for any of us in data and business analytics is to generate an insight that is actionable for action to take and for us to learn from that action being taken. That's what this profession's all about. If you don't want to go down that path, business analytics is really not your profession. There's very noble professions that are involved in research. But business analytics ultimately has to be about actionable insight, action being taken, and then the constant learning of the outcomes or the disposition of those actions. To the credit of Ford, back in 2014, the leadership team got this. And therefore, we've embarked on a journey to truly transform ourselves and make these challenges go away. So we're not getting up in the morning and dealing with analytic inconsistencies and limited capabilities. We're not getting up in the morning trying to figure out how to deal with collecting and curating data assets or processing speeds. Our goal is to put together a systematic approach which allows us to get the infrastructure right, to build the technical competencies that go along with it, but to tie all of those with the primary objective of solving business problems and better connecting with our customers. Because that's what this industry is looking for. That's what all industries are looking for. If you're really going to transform your business model, at the end of the day, customer centricity cannot just be a management buzzword. And to be truly customer-centric, you have to act like that customer you're dealing with is your only customer. You may have millions of customers like us, but you act like that customer is your only customer. And if that customer was your only customer, how well would you know them? How well would you anticipate their needs? How proactive would you be on acting on those needs? That's what it's all about. Now, is it easy for an industrial organization to do? No, we're awful at this, historically. Think about how crazy it was for me personally to come back. I was out on the East Coast dealing with financial institutions, telcos, tech companies, and I decided to come back to automotive, which is an industry that historically, data and analytics has been the biggest anathema to. Because we are an industry where you are born into it. You have gasoline in your veins. We train you for 30 years to prepare you to be able to make a decision. Guys, there's some truth in that. You look at GM or Ford, or to a lesser extent Chrysler, how many people have grown up in the ranks, which is good on one dimension. But it has created a very strong organizational bias towards evidence-based decisioning. Data and analytics in automotive has historically been around, give me reports and information that confirm the decision I made was a good decision. Which is why we've adopted business intelligence tools till the cows come home. We live for dashboards. We live for reporting. I never had to check my watch any morning in my decade at GM because at 6:35 a.m., the phone was ringing to get overnight sales results, which I had to make sense of by 6:35 every morning. My team had to make sense of it. I was just merely the mouthpiece. But that's how we were oriented. But ultimately, if you're going to bring data and analytics to life, you have to make the commitment to move down this scale. And the goal state is to be evidence-based in our decisioning. Doesn't mean you take the art out of the equation. The art has to augment, the business knowledge has to augment the science. They go hand in hand. And then if you're truly serious about moving all the way down to the right, you join a very small group of companies that are truly customer-centric. And it is a very, very small group. absent USAA, there is no financial institution who is truly customer-centric. There is no telco that is truly customer-centric. There are very few tech companies that are truly customer-centric. There are very few packaged goods companies, and I really can't think of any industrial company. There may occasionally be a brand or two, like Lexus has tried to over the years, but it is an exception, not the rule. So that's the journey we jumped into. And to do this right, and my soon-to-be concluding pieces of advice to you, is that if you're really going to go down this journey, you have to embrace it as a transformational initiative. Because it isn't about more data. It isn't just about infrastructure. It isn't just about analytic methods. It isn't just about hiring hundreds of data scientists. It's about realizing that the process goes from the cores of knowledge formulation and problem formulation, and then acquiring and organizing data assets in an environment which will allow you to make sense of them. It is clearly about generating insights from those data assets. It's increasingly about generating foresight so you can get to a complete and actionable view of customers. But it's about ultimately generating actions and being able to consume that information through your business decisioning, and then tracking, assessing, and feeding all of that back in. That's what this journey is about. So our commitment since day one has been to embrace it like a transformational journey. Don't get me wrong, there are days when I get up and go, oh my goodness gracious, we're really trying to do this. But the fact that we've made that commitment to look at it holistically, I firmly believe is a best-in-class approach. Because most companies do one or two of these things well. They will make the investment in infrastructure. They'll make the investment in workflow tools. They'll stand up a data organization, or they'll try to put together a COE around an analytics team. The only way to do this systematically, if you're really going to use data and insight and analytics as an enabler to your business, is to embrace it as such. And that's the winning hand. And by the way, if you look at the companies that do this well, that's the model USAA has, that's the model Amazon has, that's the model Procter & Gamble has. In the case of Procter & Gamble, I know some people are critical of Procter & Gamble. I would just always point out to you, they are a price premium player in a commoditized category who has generated very good financial returns for the last 3 decades, despite the fact that they're a premium pricer in a commoditized category. Think about how tough that assignment is each and every day. You're going to charge a premium for something that's largely a commodity. It's a hard business model to execute to. Amex does this in some parts of their business. There is no tech company that does this. None. Telcos are struggling to implement this. If you look at other customer-facing companies like insurance and so on, still trying to figure out how to put together the full model. So if you look at us, what's our game plan? Our game plan at Ford is get the fundamentals right. Data, governance, infrastructure, clearly enablers. Includes our analytic tools, includes our training, includes our talent. We are then focused on real business needs and business questions embedded with our business partners each and every day. And they're focused on 3 areas: what we're producing, how we're producing, and ultimately for whom. There's not a day that goes by that we are not with and embedded and working with our business partners, because that is so important for us to understand their issues and to drive consumption and to continuously learn. It's fun. It is taking us up this fun-filled pyramid of getting, yes, the fundamentals right. We do occasionally do David Letterman's stupid data pet tricks because everybody wants reports or fun facts or kind of the sizzle that goes along with it. But we're moving very rapidly up the higher value added that the business is really looking for. Help me understand the future better. Help me allocate resources better. Help me anticipate my customer needs. Help me act upon those needs. Help me interact with my customers in a more meaningful way. It's actually one of the more exciting fields in analytics right now, is on the behavioral side, because it's not just the what, it's about the how. We're human beings, which means we're functional and emotional simultaneously. So I may be very effective on the how and not great on the what, or I may be really great on the what and terrible on the how. We believe that if you're going to be great with customers, you've got to get both of it right. And the how is understanding those emotional dimensions and how to interact and the frequency of those interactions and the tone of those interactions. So I'm not just presenting you information about the vehicle, the functionality, or the price, but I'm understanding the other nuances that are important in my ability to connect with you as an individual, which ultimately is the key to one-to-one marketing, which will happen in the next 10 years. So it's a fun time. I will leave you with one of my favorite cartoons. This is what we got to guard against. We have to get up each and every day and guard against this. Because it's not just about big data. It's not just about advanced analytics. My entire career has been based upon those things that are important to us. It's about the ability to have an actionable insight, taking that action, and continuously learning from that. That's where business analytics is going to go. So thank you guys very much. I'm so happy to see you. So happy to be back home in Detroit. It's so cool that when you go to a Detroit meeting, you've got 300 people that care about data and analytics. 5 years from now, I guarantee it'll be like 3,000 people because of the critical motion of what's going on in this category. Thank you. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. I'd be delighted to take some questions. Thank you very much for the invite.